All right, so we're going deep today on something I bet you never even think about.
What's that?
The 7-day week. You know, Monday, Tuesday, all the way to Sunday.
Huh. I guess I died. I mean, it just is what it is.
Exactly. But did you ever wonder, like, why 7 days? Why not 5? Why not 10?
Now that you mention it, why not?
It's actually a total trip, this whole thing. We dug up some ancient Babylonian stuff, religious texts, even modern research.
Sounds like quite the deep dive.
It is, and we're going to find out why 7 days became, well, the week. It's not arbitrary at all.
Okay, you've got me hooked. Where do we start?
Well, it all begins way back with the OG astronomers, the Mesopotamians, especially those Babylonians.
Those guys were like the rock stars of ancient astronomy. I mean,
Yeah.
they were mapping the night sky centuries before telescopes even existed.
Seriously dedicated, right? So how do some ancient sky watchers end up shaping our modern calendar?
Well, they noticed something really interesting. 7 celestial bodies that didn't move like the other stars.
What do you mean? Like they
Yeah.
just kind of hung out?
Well, no. They moved, but in a different way. It was the sun and the moon, obviously, but then also those 5 planets you can see with the naked eye. Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn.
Okay, the Wanderers.
Exactly. And to the Babylonians, these weren't just some pretty lights. They were super powerful. They believed these wandering stars influenced everything, like harvests, people's destinies, the whole 9 yards.
Hold on, are we talking astrology here? Like what's your sign and all?
The Babylonians were big into astrology. They were like the pioneers, really believed that where those planets were in the sky directly affected life down here on Earth. And here's where things get really wild. That number 7, because of those powerful wanderers, it took on this huge sacred meaning. It represented like this ultimate cosmic order, a divine blueprint that they even reflected in their calendar.
So that's why they had a 7-day week, each day connected to one of those celestial bodies.
Wow. So my Monday blues, is that like some ancient Babylonian moon vibe I'm tapping into?
Maybe. It's pretty mind-blowing, right? It is. Kind of spooky, too. But wait, I thought I read somewhere that not everyone was on this 7-day thing right away. Didn't some cultures have different weeks?
You're right. The Egyptians, for instance, they had a 10-day week. It was tied to their agriculture, the flooding of the Nile, their whole life, basically.
And what about in Asia?
Well, over in China, some early dynasties also had a 10-day week. And, certain Japanese cultures, they actually operated on a 5-day cycle. So yeah, people have always been messing around with how we slice up time.
So how did this Babylonian 7-day system win out?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
As different empires came and went, trade routes started connecting the world, and having everyone on the same time system, well, it just became essential.
Yeah, makes sense. Try scheduling a shipment of silk from China when your weeks are all out of whack.
Exactly. And since the 7-day week was already being used by a bunch of powerful empires, it offered that, that syncing that everyone needed.
So practicality, it was just easier. But wasn't it more than just being convenient? Didn't this Babylonian system also come with, like, some spiritual weight?
Absolutely. By the time the Romans, who were rocking an 8-day week at the time, switched to the 7-day system, it wasn't just a practical thing. They'd inherited all that Babylonian cosmological and spiritual stuff that came with it. It was this whole, divinely ordained order in the universe kind of thing. And that really resonated, especially as Christianity started to spread.
Oh, right, because of the biblical creation story. 6 days of creation, 1 day of rest. That fits perfectly into a 7-day week, so I'm guessing that's why it really took off.
Huge boost. I mean, the Bible's influence was massive, linking the 7-day week to creation itself. Basically cemented it into Western society. Then later, Islam adopted the 7-day week too, and it just spread even further around the globe.
So we've got practicality, religion, and just kind of how history played out. All these things came together to create this 7-day legacy that we're still living with today. It's crazy. It's funny though, this number 7, it pops up everywhere, not just the calendar. 7 wonders of the world, 7 deadly sins, Snow White and the 7 dwarfs. Is there something special about 7?
It's a question that people have been asking for ages. Philosophers, mystics, everyone seems to be fascinated by it. 7 does seem to have this unique meaning in so many cultures and traditions. It's associated with completeness, divinity, wisdom, you name it. But even from a practical point of view, 7 just might be the sweet spot, for our brains.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. 5 days might just feel too short, 10 too long, but 7, it just feels right, like a rhythm that's manageable. Maybe our minds just naturally gravitate to that number, and that's why it works so well for a week.
So you're saying we're all still marching to this ancient Babylonian drum beat because, well, 7 days just feels right.
That's the question, isn't it? And to really get why this rhythm is so deeply embedded in our lives, we need to step out of the ancient world and into the modern one. You might be surprised just how much this simple week shapes everything, how we work, how we play, even how we feel.
So we've got this ancient 7-day week that came from looking at the stars, and now it's like baked into everything we do.
Yeah, it's pretty wild when you think about it. It's like we're all living in this giant clock, and the 7-day week is, the thing that makes it tick.
It really does dictate so much. Work schedules, shopping, even school. It's like, when do we feel stressed? When do we get to relax? The week decides.
Exactly. And it's not just people with traditional jobs either. Pretty much everyone feels that pull, of the weekly cycle. Weekends are like, it's a cultural touchstone, time with family and friends, hobbies. For lots of people, it's when they connect with their faith.
It's true. Weekends are built into everything. Our social lives, the economy, it all revolves around the week.
Oh, yeah. Don't even get me started on the economy. I mean, production cycles, stores, even the stock market. The 7-day week is the heartbeat of, well, basically everything.
Whoa, I hadn't thought about it like that. That's a lot of power for such a simple concept.
Right. And it makes you wonder, if we were starting from scratch today, building a brand new world, all high tech and everything, would we still go with a 7-day week?
That's a big question. I mean, part of me really likes it. It's familiar, like a rhythm that's just there. But could we do better? Maybe longer periods of work than a bigger break? Would we be more productive?
It's a fascinating idea, a world where we could really personalize our schedules, like
Mm,
figure out when we work best and build a week around that. Maybe even say goodbye to Monday through Friday altogether.
right. But there's got to be a downside. What if everyone's week is different?
Chaos. Imagine trying to make plans with people when everyone's on a different schedule. And think about all those cultural traditions tied to the week. Would we lose that shared rhythm, that sense of, doing things together?
That's a good point. We crave structure, but we also want freedom. Maybe the 7-day week, even if it's not perfect, is the best compromise.
It might be. Maybe the point isn't to find the perfect week, but to understand the trade-offs. It all boils down to finding what works for each of us as individuals and as a society.
So, no 10-day work week with a 5-day weekend for me.
Bummer.
Well, not so fast. Maybe the 7-day cycle is what works best overall, but even within that, there's tons of room for flexibility.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about companies trying out 4-day work weeks. And people are definitely getting creative about blending work and personal time.
Technology gives us a lot more control over our schedules, too. The real takeaway might not be ditching the 7-day week, but making it work better for us, not the other way around.
Being more mindful of how it shapes our lives, I like that.
Okay.
It's not the week that's the problem, it's how we use it. So
But
maybe instead of looking back at ancient Babylon, we should be looking forward to, like, how can we hack the week? Exactly. Time is valuable, and the 7-day week, for all its quirks, is a tool. We just need to use it wisely, to shape it, to make sure it helps us reach our goals, both individually and as a society.
Well said. You know what else I'm curious about? Those other week systems we talked about. The ones that didn't make it. Like the Egyptians and their 10 days with a dedicated day of rest. Maybe there's something we can learn from them.
It's a great point. The lost weeks of history might hold some secrets to a more balanced life.
Okay, so we've talked about ancient Babylon, modern life, everything in between. It's clear the 7-day week, it's here to stay. But before we wrap up, I'm still thinking about those other week systems we talked about, the ones that kind of got lost in the shuffle. What can we learn from them?
It's tempting to think that the 7-day week just won out because it was better, but it wasn't that simple.
Mm.
Take the Egyptians of their 10-day week, for example. It was really connected to their farming and the Nile River. Like their whole civilization revolved around that rhythm.
But then Egypt's power faded, and those other influences came in, and boom, the 10-day week was gone.
Pretty much. It shows that even something as basic as how we measure time, well, it's influenced by all sorts of things. Astronomy, religion, politics, even the environment. The 7-day week just kind of lined up with a lot of those forces at the right moment.
Right place, right time. Makes sense. But here's what I'm thinking. Even though those other week systems disappeared, maybe they still have something to teach us today. Could we learn from how they were structured or like the ideas behind them?
I think so. The Egyptians, with their 10-day week, they actually had a specific day for rest and religious stuff, kind of like our Sabbath.
Like a built-in day off. I like that.
Imagine if we had more designated days of rest,
Hmm.
not just the weekend, but, spread out throughout the week.
We'd probably be a lot less stressed out and maybe even get more done. And hey, what about a longer week, like that 10-day cycle?
Now you're talking. Think about it. Maybe we could have longer vacations, more focused work blocks, a whole new balance between work and life.
It's amazing what a little shift in perspective can do. This whole deep dive has been eye-opening. I used to think the 7-day week was this unchangeable thing, like gravity or something, but it's not. It's something we created.
It is. It's a product of history, culture, humanity, trying to understand time, its place in the universe.
And knowing that, well, it makes you feel like we have more control, you know?
Absolutely. It means we have the power to shape time, to make it work for us, to connect with each other, maybe even understand ourselves a little better.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with this thought. Next time you look at your calendar, don't just see a bunch of squares. See all that history, those traditions, that human desire to make sense of it all. Maybe it'll inspire you to try something new, to find a rhythm that really clicks for you, whether it's sticking with the 7-day week or coming up with something totally different.
I love that. It's been great exploring this with you. And for everyone listening, keep asking those questions, keep digging, and make the most of your time, however you choose to measure it.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with another journey into the surprising depths of everyday life.